Hey, this is Matt. Once again, welcome back to another video. This is another paid request. It's time for Drake B. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, review, topic, re-review, reaction, commentary, what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. Now, like I said, this is for the lineup from 1958, thanks to Drake B. And it's directed by Don Siegel. This is a guy who would go on to direct Dirty Harry. And Clint Eastwood said one of the people he studied for his directing style, one of them was Don Siegel. I think the other was Sergio Leone. Now, it stars Eli Wallach, who is in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He's one of the three. And he's definitely the best part of the movie. Sorry about that. I guess it's loosely based on a TV show or like a radio show, which I had never watched. But I did saw on a TV show, and I think the two cops on it return in this. And I would say that's the worst part of the movie, are the cop portions, especially the first 20 minutes. Because the first 20-some minutes is like a really boring version of Dragnet. The very beginning wasn't bad. There's this taxi driver, and he has to go on the run for a reason we find out later. And he runs over this cop, but the cop shoots him, and he gets his car over here, and the driver dies. And the two detectives investigate. It takes place in San Francisco. And you find out that there's these knickknacks that have dope and heroin in it. And there's a smuggling operation. It's a police procedural. They get a witness to look at a lineup. He can't tell. Just looking for the porter that tries to steal the guy's suitcase. And you find out that there's drugs in it. And that's how you find out there's a smuggling operation. He can't tell who's on the lineup. But then that porter is found dead later. And it's kind of like a lame version of Dragnet. Because the two cops are pretty meh in their acting. It's not that they're bad or terrible. Just very basic and bland. And I'm going, okay, it's just alright. Like, that's kind of a reaction. Like, alright. And then it's when the criminals... It's almost as if, some people describe it as Don Siegel. He had to put the cops in there, but he didn't give a shit. But he did give a shit about the criminals. And it makes sense why people think that way, because that's how it feels. Because when the criminals come into it, that's when the movie kind of is given a new life. Which is the more interesting of characters. You have Eli Wallach as Dancer. And then, which is a weird name for a character, Dancer, but okay. And then this other guy who's an older guy, and it's his mentor. They're from Miami, they're going to San Francisco, and they're supposed to get 3 of these knickknacks that has these drugs in them for a guy called The Man. That's always called The Man. They have a new driver, played by Richard Jaeckel, who, I like Richard Jaeckel. He was in The Green Slime and Grizzly, and he's been in a few films. I think Tina the Tip Boxers he was in. Like, a lot of films I remember seeing as a kid, I would see this guy pop up on. And they're supposed to retrieve these shipments. And the reason I say these characters are more interesting, Eli Wallach, he had a little bit of what William Forsythe would do in Out for Justice. Granted, I love Out for Justice more, I love William Forsythe more in Out for Justice, but that got kind of psycho, that anything could happen, and especially if you push him the wrong way. Someone even describes him as a psychopath with no inhibitions. He's an addict with a big habit. Like heroin? No, H as in hate. And like Eli Wallach would have these conversations like someone goes, "What's the deal with you?" "Well, I had an old man once." "Most people do." "Well, I never met mine." Like, the way he is acting throughout this, you tell he's like a ticking time bomb ready to explode, and you're waiting for that to happen. And like, he was fairly good in this. Even the guy who's the mentor, who's kind of trying to teach him to be a better criminal, how to speak more properly. And he also has this weird thing where he wants to know the victim's last words. So if Eli Wallach kills someone, the guy, his mentor's like, "Well, what was his last words?" And he writes them down in his notepad. So they're both, batshit insane. And it made me go, why didn't you make the cops as interesting as the crooks? Because really the rest of it is they gotta go from A to B to C to get to these 3 shipments. When someone dies, the cops are 3 steps behind and just very blasé, bland, boring characters. And it's like, go back to the criminals, because their conversations with the driver, Richard Jaco, where they're like, "Hey, don't talk so much. Mr. Dancer prefers little conversation from outsiders. He works better that way." Like, they have a certain set perimeter, set program that they want to do. And like, these are guys you just don't want to mess with. And so you have scenes like, for example, Eli Wallach is in a sauna with a guy trying to get this item, but the guy asks for too much money. And the way it looks with the sauna, there's so much smoke you can barely see anything. And the guy pulls out a silencer and just shoots him. There's another one they try to get, and the guy, I won't call him a butler, but he's kind of a butler, but not. He's like, "Well, he's sleeping. You come back 2 hours? No, I want it now." And when the guy tries to take it away, he just says, like, he doesn't say, "Don't fuck with me," but you tell his persona, like, "Don't fuck with me." And it's like, yeah, this is a wild animal who's tamed right now, but you don't unleash him, and he does. And I mean, it's not as violent as I'm making it sound like. This is still 1958, so it's not nearly as violent as I'm making it out to be. But I would say the film itself was okay. It was all right. There's some decent photography, and especially in the finale, during the car chase, you did some nice shots of the old San Francisco, how it was back in the day. It's a fairly decent, despite the rear projection, however you want to put it, decent car chase. Like I said, Eli Wallach and the guy who plays his mentor are definitely the MVPs of the film and make it worth a watch. The third case they get to is a mom and her daughter, and they can't find it, and you find out that the daughter didn't know what the powder was, so he used it for her dolly. You're like, oh my god, the man's not going to be happy. Well, he's not going to believe us, but if they tell him, we're in the clear and they'll believe them. Like I said, as I'm watching the film, I'm going, these criminals are more interesting. Even Richard Jaco, how he's like very talky, and then he realizes how serious these guys are, and he talks less and less. It's definitely more their film, more their movie. And I mean, photography wise, it's all right. I mean, it's nothing Alfred Hitchcock style. There's I can't think of any really cool camera movements or POVs or anything of the sort. I said, anytime it goes to the cops, it's just a crappy episode of Dragnet. There's nothing in it to me that was really that oh wow. It's kind of a mid to average movie that gets a bit of an adrenaline punch because of Eli Wallach's acting and even the other guys acting. Like, that's really kind of when it got to that bits of the story. That's when it was intriguing to see what would happen next with these characters. I would say my favorite bit, spoilers, is Eli Wallach meets with the man who's in a wheelchair and tells him the truth, and the guy stupidly slaps him. So Eli Wallach, gets pissed and pushes the guy in the wheelchair off the fucking balcony to his death, and he runs off. And his mentor's like, "Well, what happened? Let me talk to the man." He's like, "That'd be hard. He pushed too far, so I pushed him far enough." That was my favorite line in the movie. I thought that was such a great line, and the way Eli Wallach delivered it. He pushed too far, I pushed him far enough, and he did, and right to his death. I thought that was really good. The ending felt almost a little bit anticlimactic. I mean, you get the car chase, super spoilers, then the driver, he can't drive anymore, he gets knocked out. Doesn't get killed, he gets knocked out. Then the mentor, for some reason, Eli Wallach gets pissed at him, and then when the guy runs, he shoots him in the back. I didn't quite get that with how long they knew each other. But I guess, as the guy said, he's a psychopath with no inhibitions. So he gets a girl, he gets shot, he goes, the bridge, that gap in the middle, he goes into there with a dummy shot. One of those dummy shots that just bounces off and stuff. And then it's pretty much over with text going, "We want to thank the San Francisco police for their participation." I mean, the way the music is, like I said, it just felt like an overlong episode of Dragnet with two or so interesting villains. So, if you're a big fan of Eli Wallach, it's definitely worth a watch for that, and for his stuff with his mentor. Action-wise, like I said, you get a decent car chase at the end. Character-wise, like I said, the police are very boring. Really not much character, personality to them, or development. The music, again, fits like a episode of a TV show of that time. Just really, I mean, I know it gets high marks. If it's for Eli Wallach, I agree. For the rest of the stuff, it's, I mean, I don't think it's an awful, terrible movie. It's just kind of there with a couple pretty solid performances by the villains who made the film watchable. Even the cinematography, I mean, I've seen other films, Hitchcock films and other films, like, do more with their cinematography. Or to see more of the cityscape. Other than maybe the car chase at the end, but the rest of it is kind of... I would say maybe that and the bit where Eli Wallach meets the man is like in this very public place with a little like a carnival and stuff happening. Like, that was not too bad photography-wise. I said, not a bad film. It's always interesting to see an older 50s black and white movie, to see just how things have changed greatly from then to now. So it's always nice to see through that window through time. So it's still fascinating. And, yeah, there you go. So with that said, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.